Staff Sergeant Jerry M. Shriver, popularly known as Mad Dog, ran from cover to cover.
Vietnam, 1969. Deep in the jungle near the Cambodian border, a MACV SOG team walked straight into an ambush. They were outnumbered and outgunned. Radio contact suddenly cut out, except for one chilling transmission.
"Don't pull me out. I'm going to finish this."
The voice belonged to Master Sergeant Jerry Mad Dog Shriver. There were no official records after that. No confirmed body. Just stories. Stories about a man who took on missions meant to get him killed, who was said to carry enemy ears as trophies, and who somehow appeared and vanished before the Viet Cong could even react. To them, he was a ghost. To his own men, a necessary nightmare. He didn't just fight in the Vietnam War, he haunted it. This is the story of the most terrifying man of the Vietnam War.
Don't pull me out. I said I'm going to finish this.
Don't pull me out. I'm going to finish this. The voice belonged to Master Sergeant Jerry Mad Dog Shriver. No official records.
Before the jungle swallowed him, before the name Mad Dog was whispered in enemy chatter. Jerry Michael Shriver was just a small-town kid from Defuniak Springs, Florida. He was born on September 24, 1941, into a country on the edge of joining World War II. Jerry grew up surrounded by tall southern pines and a family steeped in military tradition. His father, a lifelong Army officer, raised him with discipline and a strong sense of duty. But even early on, it was clear Jerry was wired differently. His fire was something else, wild, untamed, unpredictable. When he finally joined the Army, the war in Southeast Asia was building. But Jerry didn't just want to serve, he wanted to throw himself into the heart of combat. He joined the elite Special Forces, the Green Berets, and quickly made a name for himself as someone with no fear. But it didn't stop there. Jerry didn't just face danger, he chased it, welcomed it, and somehow thrived in it. In Vietnam, his legend really began with MACV SOG, the Military Assistance Command, Vietnam Studies and Observations Group. This wasn't a regular unit, it was top secret. They worked in the shadows, deep behind enemy lines. Their missions were the most dangerous: sabotage, assassinations, and reconnaissance in hostile territory. And Jerry? He volunteered for the ones nobody else wanted. He led Black Ops teams across borders into Laos and Cambodia. No backup, no uniforms, no safety net. He never dressed by regulation. Instead, he wore tiger-striped fatigues, a black beret, dark sunglasses, and often painted his face in camo. A belt of grenades strapped across his chest completed the look. He didn't look like a soldier. He looked like something the jungle had created. To the Vietnamese, he was something close to a spirit. To the Americans, his name started spreading: Mad Dog. Nobody heard him claim it. He didn't have to. He earned it through blood, fire, and silence. Psychological operations teams started using the image of him, this mythic warrior, as part of their war strategy. They let the rumors grow. They wanted the enemy to fear the shadows. And Jerry had become the darkest shadow of all. He wasn't just a man anymore. He was a weapon, a story, a legend. The most terrifying man of the Vietnam War had become something even more powerful than fear, a ghost you believed in. Some said this man carried a deck of cards, each one carved with death threats written in Vietnamese. Others believed he left eerie signs at enemy camps, symbols, scrolls, strange marks meant to rattle the mind more than harm the body. But behind all those stories, there was still a man. And that man was slowly slipping further away from rules, reason, and even reality. Jerry wasn't looking to die. He just wasn't afraid of it. He didn't see the jungle as a danger. He saw it as home. His teammates noticed the change. He laughed too loud, stepped forward for the hardest jobs too fast, and slept less and less as time went on. His drive for perfection grew with each mission, each close call. To Jerry, War wasn't chaos. It was the only place that made sense. But even the scariest legends start with small cracks. His commanders began to worry. His thirst for danger, the way he seemed to invite death, made them uneasy. Still, the results kept them quiet. Jerry delivered, time after time. So he kept going. More missions, more bodies. And with each one, the man faded deeper into his own myth. Even other special forces couldn't tell where Jerry ended and Mad Dog began. Maybe Jerry couldn't either. By the start of 1969, rumors were growing. Jerry was planning something big, a final mission deep into Cambodia. The kind of op that didn't get written down. No paperwork, no backup. He insisted on going. The jungle was calling. And Mad Dog never turned away from the jungle. Jerry Shriver wasn't born a monster. He became one. Slowly, willingly. In a war where right and wrong were blurred and survival took something more than human, Jerry didn't lose his soul. He gave it away. In the shadowy corners of Vietnam, where everyone was either an enemy or a soon-to-be memory, a new figure began to rise. Something between man and myth. Jerry was already a ghost. But the stories people told made him more than that. Some said Jerry Shriver and Mad Dog were two different people. They knew each other, respected each other, but only one walked out of the jungle. And what came out wasn't just a soldier anymore. He became a symbol. A whisper passed from one unit to the next. Something nobody could quite explain. Nobody could predict. Mad Dog wasn't just a man in the field anymore. He was a feeling, a shadow in the trees, a name that made enemies shiver and allies uneasy. The rumors spread faster than the choppers slicing through the air. Some said he wore a necklace made from enemy ears. Others claimed he spoke in riddles, like every word was a puzzle with no answer. One story told of him slipping into a Viet Cong camp at night, not to attack, but to sit and watch, just to let them feel him there. And they did. Soldiers froze in fear, as if the jungle itself had let him in. His legend wasn't built only on survival. It was something more, something darker. It was the stories that made him more than just a man. The men who'd fought beside him swore he had a sixth sense for danger. He could smell it, one teammate said. He'd know we were being tracked before we ever saw a thing. They'd hear a stick snap, nothing out of the ordinary, but Jerry would freeze, dead still, like a wolf in the dark. While the others scanned the trees, unsure, he'd whisper, "They're here." People dismissed these stories as overblown, but there was something strange. They kept popping up, mission after mission, the same pattern. Jerry moved through the jungle in ways nobody else could. His timing, his feel for enemy movement, it was more than skill. It felt instinctive, almost unnatural. In the middle of a war where survival was everything, Jerry Shriver became something else, a perfect predator. But living in the shadows came at a cost. The pressure, the violence, the endless missions, they started to wear him down. Slowly, bit by bit, Jerry was changing. Even the people closest to him couldn't explain it. He wasn't just leading missions anymore. He was the mission. The man and the war had started to blend together. To his commanders, Jerry's methods were a blessing and a curse. He could pull off the impossible. He was fearless, but that same fearlessness was starting to spiral. His hunger for chaos, his obsession with fear itself, it was pushing people away. The men who once followed him without question started to doubt. Some said morale was breaking. His demands never eased. He expected more and more. And when anyone hesitated, he shut it all down, with results. In 1968, he led one of his most dangerous and successful missions. Deep near the Cambodian border, he destroyed a huge Viet Cong weapons cache. But it wasn't just the outcome that stood out. It was how he did it. Mad Dog didn't just take out the depot, he wiped it from the map. The destruction was so complete, so chaotic that it looked like a natural disaster had torn through. The Viet Cong had no idea how their most protected supply line had been shattered overnight. To them, it was as if the jungle had risen up, and Mad Dog was at the center of it. The mission got him praise from higher up, but more than that, it carved his name even deeper into the enemy's fear. Reports about what he'd done spread fast. Soldiers whispered about how he moved unseen, how he struck without warning and vanished like smoke. But maybe the scariest part wasn't what he did. It was how he acted afterward. No celebrating, no fist bumps, no relief. Jerry didn't smile. He didn't pause. He just moved on. Because for him, the mission didn't end until the fear was complete, until the enemy was nothing but smoke and ash. As the legend grew, so did the chill that followed his name. People started to say Jerry Shriver wasn't just a soldier anymore. He was the war. He was everything it meant, relentless, cold, and impossible to understand. Some feared him, some respected him, but no one really knew who Jerry Shriver was anymore. All they had were the stories. The myths kept spreading. They grew louder with every whispered story, fed by the paranoia of a war where winning wasn't just about bullets, it was about fear. Out in the jungle, psychological dominance mattered just as much as firepower. And by now it was clear, Mad Dog wasn't just a nickname, it was what Jerry Shriver had become. A creature of war, untouchable by the army, the enemy, or even his own mind. The last mission. By 1969, Jerry Shriver's name meant one thing: death in the jungle. He wasn't just a soldier anymore. He was a force, relentless, unstoppable, with one goal: to bring chaos wherever he went. But the war was shifting, and so was Shriver. The violence he had once unleashed without hesitation was starting to press down on him. You could see it in the way he moved, slower, heavier. The weight wasn't just on his body, it was on his mind. His actions had left deep scars across Vietnam, but they'd also started to leave scars on him. That spring, one final mission was planned. A mission so secret that even some higher-ups didn't know the full details. This wasn't routine. This was everything Shriver had trained for, everything he had become. The target, a heavily guarded Viet Cong base buried deep in South Vietnam. It wasn't just any outpost. This place was important. Attacks on U.S. troops were being launched from there, and intel said it was fortified like a fortress. Shriver's team had the job of breaking in, gathering key intel, and making it out alive. The most important thing, one team member would later say, was holding that landing zone. Losing it meant losing everything. But there was a catch. This wasn't just an enemy stronghold. It was a message. A place built on secrecy and fear. And rumors said a Viet Cong unit operated from there, one just as ruthless, just as efficient as Mad Dog's team. This wasn't a mission for a regular soldier. It was a mission for a ghost. For weeks, Shriver and his men prepared. They studied maps, listened to every shred of intelligence, and crafted a plan so detailed it felt like something out of a movie. Every second counted. One mistake could mean death, not just for Jerry, but for every man on the mission. But for Mad Dog, failure didn't exist. It wasn't in his vocabulary. On the night of the op, the air was thick with tension. Shriver's men could feel it, like a weight pressing down on their chests. A mix of adrenaline and cold uncertainty. They had crossed deep into enemy territory before, but this was different. This wasn't just a jungle anymore. It was the heart of the war, and they weren't just soldiers. They had become part of the war itself. They moved out under cover of night. The jungle was dead silent, like the world was holding its breath. Every sound, every step mattered. Shriver led the way, his men trailing him without hesitation. No one questioned him, not now. But as they crept deeper into enemy ground, a new feeling started to settle in. Not doubt, not panic, fear. It crawled in slowly, step by step. There was no turning back now. The mission had begun. As the team reached the outer edges of the base, they ran into heavier resistance than they expected. The enemy was ready. The firefight that followed was violent and relentless. But Jerry Shriver wasn't rattled by the chaos. He had one focus: getting in. The Viet Cong were fierce, but Shriver's mind was already miles ahead. He had planned for this. He knew where to hit, when to move, how to twist the situation in their favor. He wasn't improvising. He was executing a plan he'd already seen play out in his head. The night dragged on, time stretching with every heartbeat. But Shriver never slowed. He pushed his men through thick jungle, cutting through the dark as if the brush and bullets were part of him. Reality seemed to fade into the madness. Gunfire cracked, men shouted, and the screams of the wounded filled the night. But for Shriver, it was just noise. Another part of the mission. When they finally reached the core of the base, the truth hit hard. This mission wasn't about gathering intel anymore. It was about survival. The Viet Cong had known. They'd set traps, prepared defenses, waited. The air turned heavy, thick with heat and fear, as Mad Dog and his men readied themselves for a final stand. But in the chaos, Jerry did what only he could. He took control of it. He became the chaos. A shadow in the dark, he moved through the firestorm like something not quite human, cutting down enemy soldiers with terrifying precision. But as the first light of dawn crept over the jungle, something shifted. Shriver's team, so solid, so sure, began to waver. Exhaustion caught up with them. The fighting, the blood, the weight of it all, it began to show. They trusted Mad Dog, but they were breaking. And in that moment, the line between hero and madman had never been so thin. Then Jerry Shriver made a choice, one that would mark the end of more than just a mission. With his team at the edge of collapse, he made the call to retreat. Not in panic, not in defeat, but with surgical precision. He pulled his men back, step by step, out of the enemy's grasp. The mission, while messy and brutal, had hit its mark. They had the intelligence. They had what they came for. But at what cost? The higher-ups called it a success. But Jerry knew better. That last mission wasn't just about skill. It was about what was left inside him and what he had to give up to survive. Mad Dog Shriver had done what others couldn't, killed when it was needed, pushed past the limit, and dragged his men out alive. But death had left its mark on him. It wasn't a shadow anymore. It was part of him, and he would carry that weight from that day forward. As the choppers lifted off from the blood-soaked jungle floor, carrying Jerry Mad Dog Shriver and what was left of his team, one war was ending. But another, deeper one, had just begun. Inside him. The war didn't end. It just changed its shape. The mission was stamped a success by the brass. They got the intel. The base was torn apart. Casualties? Grim, but within acceptable numbers. But for Jerry Shriver, none of it was acceptable. Not the bodies scattered across the jungle floor. Not the empty stares of the few men who made it back. And definitely not the way death had stared right back at him and didn't flinch. Back at base, there was no celebration, no drinks, no stories, no relief. Shriver didn't speak, didn't smile. The man who had just unleashed unmatched violence now seemed quiet, tense, like a coiled rattlesnake trapped in a cage too small. That legendary fire hadn't gone out. It had just turned inward. He started spending long hours alone, studying maps, drilling in the brutal heat, pushing his body past exhaustion. His team knew what it meant. He wasn't winding down. He was getting ready for something big. Rumors started to swirl across Special Forces units. Some said Jerry had grown paranoid, obsessed with the idea that there was a shadow team inside the Viet Cong. a ruthless group trained just like his own, designed to track and eliminate American operatives who had gone too far off script. Others said Jerry believed he was being watched, not just by the enemy, but by his own chain of command. He only trusted orders if they came directly from the few leaders he respected. In Vietnam, trust was fragile, and for Jerry, it was gone. Still, no one could argue his value. His reputation only grew. One general, during a classified briefing, stared at Shriver's file and muttered, "This is the most terrifying man of the Vietnam War." And maybe he was. To the Viet Cong, Jerry Shriver was a ghost wrapped in death. To his fellow soldiers, he was a legend carved in fire and napalm. In early 1970, everything changed. Shriver was handed a new mission, high risk, deeply classified, off the books. This wasn't just another recon op. It didn't even have a name. There would be no public record, no extraction plan, no guarantees. The objectives: slip across the Cambodian border, illegally under U.S. policy, and dismantle a suspected North Vietnamese command node. The stakes were high, but the brass said it was worth the risk. Jerry didn't blink. He took his team, disappeared into the trees. Then, nothing. Days passed, then weeks, then months. Radio silence. At first, command brushed it off as a comms failure, but soon, doubt turned into panic. Search teams were sent. None came back with answers. No signals, no messages, no bodies, no gear, no footprints. It was like Jerry Shriver and his team had vanished into thin air. Whispers ran wild through the ranks. Had he been captured, killed, defected? What followed was a storm of rumors. Some believed he'd been set up, betrayed by U.S. intelligence, and sent on a mission no one was supposed to come back from. Others claimed Shriver had finally crossed the line, gone native. Or worse, gone rogue. But one theory rose above the rest. It came in hushed tones from veterans who'd seen things they couldn't explain. "He was the other guy," one of them said. "He had something in him that made you respect him and feel sorry for him at the same time." They believed Jerry Shriver had stayed behind, not for revenge, not even for the mission, but because war had become his world. The jungle was the only place he felt truly alive. From there, the legend exploded. Villagers in Cambodia told stories of a pale figure moving through the mountains. North Vietnamese soldiers spoke of a ghost in enemy gear, striking under moonless skies and disappearing without a trace. Some swore he lived in a cave rigged with tripwires and bones. Others said he walked barefoot through the jungle, watching, waiting. The facts didn't matter anymore. What mattered was this: Jerry Shriver wasn't a man. He had become fear itself. Then, just when the myth seemed to settle into silence, something happened. A strange detail no one could ignore. A coded transmission, faint, scratchy, barely there, was picked up months after the mission's failure. It said one thing: "I'm still here." A ghost, still watching. Years passed, but Jerry Mad Dog Shriver never returned. No body, no funeral, no closure. Just an echo that never went away. Even today, deep in the overgrown jungles of Southeast Asia, his story lingers. Locals still whisper about a shadow soldier, silent, unseen, deadly. They say he protects some villages, destroys others. Eventually, the U.S. declared him missing in action, presumed dead. But the ones who served with him? They never believed it. To them, the war ended, for everyone except him. To some, Jerry Shriver is a warning, proof of what war can do to a man. To others, he was necessary, a monster born to hunt even worse monsters. But no matter how the story is told, he remains the most terrifying man of the Vietnam War. What stories have you heard about Mad Dog? Share them in the comments below. If you found this story gripping, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our next video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.